Exclusive contracted novel by Feilu Novel Network. Red Alert Military Industry, starting from nuclear bombing to extinct the Japanese. Shen Yao traveled through 1940 and became a disciple of Oppenheimer, able to comprehend various military technologies from Red Alert 1 to 3. When Shen Yao, who chose to return, arrived at the headquarters of the 8th Route Army, he happened to encounter a surprise attack from the Japanese. So at the beginning, Shen Yao rubbed his nuclear bomb bag and exploded the Japanese, causing the little Japanese to perish and become extinct. Eagle sauce foolish. Did you create a nuclear bomb before the Manhattan Project even started? When Dessen launched a full-scale attack and hung John Bull, the rabbit, who refused to be named, silently pulled out a single rocket launcher. Completely annihilate the 7th Division, Magnetic Storm Infantry Hard Tank. A turning flame gun. A rocket launcher that automatically searches for enemies. The steel torrent of Littlebeard runs across Europe, and the furry bear cries incessantly. The rhinoceros tank magnetic energy tank emerged, and the situation has reversed. When Eagle Sauce finally completed the final puzzle of dominance and produced the mushroom bullet, the rabbit announced its space-based weapon, the Shake Light Sky Patrol Cannon. A few years later, when the audience looked back, it turned out that the biggest mastermind behind the entire World War II was the harmless rabbit, both human and animal. And the rabbit has now regained the old mountains and rivers, and climbed to the top of the world. Feilu Novel Network reminds you that this novel and its characters are purely fictional. If there are any similarities, they are purely coincidental and should not be imitated. Chapter 1. Father of Nuclear Bombs. Oppenheimer Disciple. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 1. Father of Nuclear Bombs. Oppenheimer Disciple. In early 1940, at 7 o'clock in the morning. In the city of Berkeley in the San Francisco Bay Area, the melodious sound of bells echoes through the campus, the sunlight spreads on the grass, and students walk in groups of 3 or 2. Among these people, 2 young Eastern faces stand out particularly. Shen Yao, when do you plan to go back? The slightly older young man asked with concern. I'll leave in 3 days, and I've already bought all the tickets. There are still some tasks to be handed over in the laboratory, so I need to take advantage of this time to hand them over. The person standing in front of Shen Yao is the future famous Qian Shuessen. However, just like Shen Yao, he is now a public-funded international student sent by a flower grower to the Eagle Sauce family. A few years ago, they crossed the sea and arrived at the Eagle Sauce family, carrying the mission of revitalizing the century-old poor and weak flower grower. It has been a tradition for flower growers and scholars to study abroad. In the past century, knowledgeable individuals of flower growers have been striving to find hope for national salvation. After the establishment of the Republic of China, this trend became even more prevalent. The nationalist government selected some outstanding university students to study advanced science and technology in the United States, and they will come back to build flower growers in the future. Later, students studying in the United States began to select from middle schools, and Shen Yao was one of those who went to the Eagle Sauce family. After arriving at the Eagle Sauce family, Shen Yao entered the Department of Theoretical Physics at the University of California, Berkeley. Soon, Shen Yao showed extraordinary talent and was selected by Professor Oppenheimer as one of the latter's biological disciples. At the University of Berkeley, most students are aware of this genius from the East, who completed his undergraduate studies in 2 years and pursued another year to obtain a master's degree. During this period, Shen Yao even obtained a degree in mechanics. Now, Shen Yao is a doctoral student under Oppenheimer and a member of Oppenheimer's laboratory. But in addition to these well-known things at Berkeley, Shen Yao also has a secret hidden in his heart. He is a traveler. 4 years ago, Shen Yao traveled to this parallel world, when the foot-bowl chicken was about to invade. Shen Yao's parents, as underground workers for rabbits, went missing while lurking outside the pass. They were later confirmed to have sacrificed themselves on the hidden front line. In order to protect Shen Yao, the organization used connections to send the 16-year-old Shen Yao to the Eagle Sauce family for further education. 4 years have passed in a blink of an eye, and now that Shen Yao has achieved success in his studies, he also feels that it is time to return to the flower grower. Revenge for the parents of this lifetime, while also contributing to the flower growers. But I heard that the Eagle Sauce family is about to launch a century plan, and your mentor Professor Oppenheimer seems to be the most suitable person to lead this project. The Manhattan Project. Qian Shuesan interrupted Shen Yao's thoughts. He met Shen Yao at an academic conference, and as the proud students of von Karman and Oppenheimer, their academic achievements were on par. As soon as they met, there was a feeling of empathy. Qian Shuesan usually takes good care of his younger brother, who is quite small. Now that he heard that Shen Yao was in a hurry to return to the flower planting house, Qian Shuesan couldn't help but feel a bit regretful for Shen Yao. In Qian Shuesan's view, Shen Yao should complete his doctoral studies before returning, and if the Manhattan Project is really launched as scheduled, it is definitely a century-long project and an opportunity to climb the peak of physics. It would be a pity if Shen Yao gave up like this. Brother Qian, aren't we learning this skill just to serve our country in the future? Now that I have learned it, the current flower grower is in a state of turmoil, with most countries falling into the enemy's hands, so I must go back. As for what degrees and honors? Shen Yao smiled and shook his head, he really didn't like it. Participating in the Manhattan Project is indeed a grand event that every physicist would not want to miss, and it is also an opportunity to make a name for themselves in history. Moreover, as participants, if they can successfully master the mushroom bullet technology and return to their home country in the future, they can also provide more help to flower growers. But for Shen Yao, whether or not to participate in the Manhattan Project is actually not important. Mushroom bomb technology. He naturally has a way to master it. At this moment, deep in Shen Yu's mind, his golden fingers were still waiting to be activated. And this golden finger is also his greatest secret and reliance when he travels through this time and space. Status. To be opened, opening conditions. The host is at least 18 years old, the host is in any faction of the flower grower. These two activation conditions, the first age limit has been met by Shen Yao, and now to activate the golden finger, there is only the second condition left. This is also another reason why Shen Yao was in a hurry to leave. Although he is a renowned physics genius at the University of Berkeley, he has not yet reached the level of Qian Shuesan in his past life. He was noticed by the senior management of Eagle Sauce, who restricted his return to China and even sent people to assassinate him. But if you participate in the Manhattan Project, it won't be easy to leave then. His mentor Oppenheimer will be the leader of the Manhattan Project in the future, and as Oppenheimer's beloved disciple, Shen Yao will inevitably be exposed to the technology related to mushroom bombs. Shen Yao was well aware that this could be his last chance to successfully leave Eagle Sauce. Once the Manhattan Project began 2 years later, it would not only be a difficult journey, but also a life-threatening one. Others have sharpened their heads and wanted to join this plan, but I'm afraid this project will come knocking on me. Isn't this considered the only one? Shen Yaoxin said. Seeing that Shen Yao had made up his mind, Qian Shuesan knew that no amount of persuasion would be effective. He could only sigh and patted Shen Yao's shoulder, saying, "Then I'll go to the dock to see you off." Qian Shuesan followed his teacher von Karman to give a speech at the University of Berkeley. Seeing that it was almost time, Qian Shuesan said goodbye to Shen Yao. After seeing off Qian Shuesan, Shen Yao looked towards the laboratory with a pensive expression in his eyes. Although he will leave next month, Shen Yao does not intend to leave empty-handed. He worked for Oppenheimer for 4 years and had to pay some interest. Thinking of this, Shen Yao walked straight towards Oppenheimer's research institute. As soon as he entered the laboratory, Shen Yao saw Oppenheimer giving lectures to his senior brothers and sisters. Shen Yao was Oppenheimer's youngest disciple and also his most proud. Shen Yao had long stopped making the mistakes these senior brothers and sisters made in the experiment. Upon hearing the sound of opening the door, Oppenheimer looked up and saw Shen Yao, whose stern expression had just dissipated in an instant. "Shen, have your compatriots left?" Shen Yao nodded and walked to the experimental platform, only to find that Oppenheimer and his senior brothers were competing with a piece of natural uranium. "Shen, are you really going back to your home country? The teacher's project is about to start, and this may be the opportunity to win the Nobel Prize." Senior sister Selena's sapphire-like blue eyes were filled with disappointment, even with a hint of reluctance. Seeing Selena like this, a hint of jealousy flashed in the eyes of several senior brothers. All the boys at Berkeley wanted to win this charming blonde beauty, but unfortunately, Selena was interested in Shen Yao. Before Shen Yao arrived, Selena was the most talented academic at the University of Berkeley, and she also created various myths about jumping to the next level. But after Shen Yao appeared, Selena, a 21-year-old graduate student, didn't look so dazzling anymore. Perhaps this is why Shen Yao attracted Selena. "Alright, Selena. We need to respect Shen's choice," Oppenheimer sighed and said helplessly. He also wanted to keep his most proud disciple several times, but Shen Yao was determined to leave. Now that the dropout procedures have been almost completed. Helpless, Oppenheimer could only become a beautiful person and let Shen Yao return to his home country. Chapter 2. Understanding Red Alert and Black Technology. Return to China. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 2. Understanding Red Alert and Black Technology. Return to China. Professor, thank you. Not long ago, Oppenheimer just signed on his dropout procedures, and Shen Yao still respects his mentor very much. However, when Shen Yao came to find Oppenheimer, he actually had other thoughts on his mind. "Before leaving, I need to play the autumn breeze with the professor and get some good things done." Shen Yao looked at the natural uranium placed in the radiation-proof container. He actually came this time for this thing. Now, Feilu has become a mess. Han's cat flashed at the Polish eagle, officially marking the beginning of World War II. The war between flower growers and foot-pot chickens has also lasted for several years. Foot-pot chickens in the Pacific Ocean are constantly challenging the hawk sauce, trying to pull the hawk sauce into the vortex of war. In order to deal with the potential threat of war, eagle sauce urgently needs an ultimate weapon with immense power that can even directly end the war. The scientists of eagle sauce have discovered the radioactivity and enormous energy contained in natural uranium. In addition, Einstein proposed the idea of an atomic bomb, and Oppenheimer, who had the most research on natural uranium radioactivity, was also most likely to become the project leader. However, all of this is still in the hypothetical stage, and the first big problem facing Oppenheimer is how to separate high concentrations of uranium from natural uranium. How to separate uranium-235 with a content of only 0.7% from natural uranium remains a global challenge. Even the scientists of Oppenheimer and Eagle Sauce are unsure whether the end of this plan will be able to create weapons with immense destructive power. "Professor, there is something I would like to apply to you for. Can I take my laboratory belongings with me when I leave school?" In recent years, Shen Yao has privately collected a lot of natural uranium from various channels, and these ores are stored in his own laboratory. Naturally, Shen Yao hopes to take these things away from the Eagle Sauce family. "Of course, those are all your personal belongings, you can certainly take them with you." Oppenheimer didn't mind either. In fact, in his opinion, there was no need to guard against Shen Yao in this matter. No one in the world can conquer uranium enrichment technology today, and there is even a huge team behind it. The physics departments of various universities in Xinjiang are all striving to conquer this technology. Uranium-235 was discovered in 1935, and today, 5 years later, this technology remains unexplored. Can Shen Yao alone conquer this technology? Oppenheimer felt it was impossible. Shen Yao is his proudest disciple, and Oppenheimer believes that it is also good to keep Shen Yao's personal collections as a souvenir for him. Besides your belongings, I am personally giving you 10 grams of enriched uranium as a gift. I hope you can continue to research on this path after returning to your home country. Shen Yao endured the ecstasy in his heart, but his expression remained the same. If he could take away these natural uranium, he would be able to try to extract enriched uranium after returning to his home country. Although the amount of these natural uranium is not large, if he could set a precedent, it would definitely be of great benefit to rabbits in developing mushroom bombs in the future. It should be easy to advance the rabbit's mastery of mushroom bullets by a few years. And Oppenheimer also gave him an unexpected joy, 10 grams of enriched uranium. With the current refining methods, this is definitely a precious gift. Thank you very much, Professor. Don't thank me, let's just consider those memories of your studies at the University of California, Oppenheimer smiled. Enjoy your last college years, kid. 3 days later. Shen Yao officially ended his college career, and Oppenheimer and his other disciples came to bid him farewell. Nowadays, there is more and more friction between eagle sauce and footpot chicken in the Pacific, and footpot chicken has blocked the waters near the flower grower. If you want to return to the flower grower, you can only go north from San Francisco, take Alaska to the Bear, and then transfer to the train. In front of the San Francisco Port Ferry Terminal, Shen Yao prepared to board the ship with boxes. The natural uranium ore was handled by Shen Yao for freight and will soon be transported to the Mao Xiong family. The organization has long sent people to prepare to pick up Shen Yao from Mao Xiong's side, so Shen Yao doesn't have to worry about problems after returning to his home country. But now Shen Yao has encountered another troublesome matter. His mischievous fairy senior sister cried to tears, and Selina even planned to buy a boat ticket to return to China with Shen Yao. If it weren't for Oppenheimer's stop, Shen Yao really didn't know what to do. Shen, after I finish my studies, I will definitely go to the flower grower to find you. Selina seemed to have made up her mind that her studies were not yet completed, so she naturally couldn't leave Eagle Sauce. At this moment, Shen Yao didn't know how to reply. Just as he was still in a daze, a fragrant breeze suddenly blew into his arms, and Selina gave Shen Yao a hug. Faced with his senior sister's surprise attack, Shen Yao felt helpless and could only deal with it for a few words before calming down Selina's emotions. Being young is really good, Qian Shuesen couldn't help but tease beside him. The older generation all said that a third-year-old woman holds a golden brick, and your senior sister has a deep affection for you. Brother Qian, don't bother me anymore. I'll take a step back and see you at the flower grower. Qian Shuesen nodded and smiled, I'll see you as a flower grower in the future. Shen Yao boarded the ship to return to the flower planting house. The whistle sounded, and Shen Yao stood on the deck, watching as the people who came to see him off at the dock gradually blurred and eventually turned into small dots. Then the land became invisible, and the surroundings became a vast sea. Shen Yao suddenly felt a sense of homesickness. He had just crossed over and left the flower planting house. It has been 4 years since the wanderer returned to his hometown. Just as Shen Yao was feeling emotional, a long silent mechanical sound suddenly rang out in the depths of Shen Yao's mind, detected host returning home, red alert technology tree has been activated. Shen Yao did not panic at the sudden sound, but rather felt ecstatic in his heart. He hasn't heard this voice for a whole 4 years. Ding! The technology tree has been successfully activated. The red alert technology tree has been activated. Do you want to bind it? Bind. Until now, Shen Yao finally saw the true face of Mount Lu with his golden fingers. Red alert technology tree. As one of the most popular real-time strategy games in his past life, Shen Yao was also a loyal fan of the Red Alert series, and he knows all the factions and classic weapons and equipment in it very well. But what Shen Yao didn't expect was that he could rediscover the shadow of this classic game after crossing over, and even become his own golden finger. Shen Yao's heart twitched as he began to examine the relevant details in his mind. Shen Yao found that at this moment, a huge tree-like diagram suddenly appeared in his consciousness, which was the so-called technology tree. At present, the only visible branches on the entire technology tree are the Allied and Soviet lines, with several other major branches currently covered by question marks. On the technology lines of the Allied and Soviet armies, Shen Yao saw many very familiar equipment. Kirov airships, V-3 rockets, light-edged tanks, and Apocalypse tanks. In addition, there are also magnetic storm infantry equipment, SEAL assault team equipment, radiation engineering equipment, Eagle Saw soldier equipment. Just the equipment had already dazzled Shen Yao, and in addition to the equipment, the various building technologies of the Red Alert were also present. The Soviet nuclear power plant, the Allied spy satellites, and Shen Yao even saw nuclear missile launch wells and lightning storm devices in them. Good guy, it's developed now. Chapter 3. Ghost Attacks, Headquarters Wants to End. Seeking. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 3. Ghost Attacks, Headquarters Wants to End. After being activated by the Golden Finger, Shen Yao spent almost half a month at sea researching the technology tree every day. The mechanism of the Golden Finger is very simple, and Shen Yao quickly understood the operating mode of the Red Alert technology tree. Unlocking technology requires the consumption of research points, in order to understand the corresponding technology of the technology. After successfully developing the technology in the technology tree, it will provide feedback to the research points. In addition, to unlock the corresponding technology, the prerequisite technology must be unlocked. For example, to unlock the Guanglin tank blueprint, the Allied tank factory and power plant technology must be unlocked. To unlock magnetic storm infantry equipment, you must unlock Soviet barracks technology. At present, apart from these two major camps, many other technology trees are still invisible, and even some technologies in the later stages of these two technology lines are also invisible. What Shen Yao can see is only the original technology and equipment of Red Alert 1 and 2, and these invisible technologies, Shen Yao speculates, should be the factions and technologies that appear in Red Alert 3 or other series of works. This makes Shen Yao a bit excited. If the technological equipment of Red Alert 1 and 2 can keep him ahead of other countries in the military industry in this era, then the military technology of Red Alert 3 represents the future. The future can also lead, even crush. However, for Shen Yao, all of this is a later story. At present, these technologies are enough for him to develop for a while, but when Shen Yao regained his senses at this moment, he discovered a crucial problem. Oh my God, if I don't post research points, what should I use for research and development? Shen Yao suddenly felt a tingling sensation on his scalp. Although many of the equipment in Red Alert referenced reality, it still had a certain sci-fi color. Most of them are weapons that do not exist in reality. Without the blueprints unlocked by the technology tree, Shen Yao Zhen could not have created the design drawings for these weapons. But now, this Golden Finger doesn't even give a research spot. Shen Yao felt depressed for a moment, always feeling like he had been played with. Look, we've reached the territory of the furry bear. Shen Yao Zhen was standing on the deck feeling depressed when suddenly someone beside him pointed to the distance and shouted loudly. Shen Yao stood on the deck and gazed into the distance. The land was already far away, and today the weather at sea was good. At this moment, they could even see the red flag of the bear flying on the land. A few more hours later, the passenger ship successfully docked at Mao Xiong's house, and Shen Yao also successfully docked with the rabbit that came to pick him up. Comrade Shen Yao, let me introduce myself. My name is Chen Wanyu, and I will be responsible for your itinerary to Yan'an. Shen Yao sat in the back seat of the car, looking at the gentle and peaceful young woman sitting in the passenger seat, feeling somewhat surprised. Comrade Shen Yao, is there anything on my face? Oh, that's not true. I just feel like you're too young, not quite like the person I imagined to be the liaison. Upon hearing Shen Yao's words, Chen Wanyu smiled faintly and said, don't worry, the organization's operations in Vladivostok are quite good, and your safety is absolutely guaranteed. It's just that if you want to return to Yan'an, you need to go in a big circle. What about the things I brought with me? Don't worry, Comrade Shen Yao. We will send someone to deliver those things to Yan'an in the future. Upon hearing that there were already arrangements in the organization, Shen Yao finally calmed down. Soon after, Chen Wanyu introduced the route back to Yan'an to Shen Yao. The defense of the Japanese in Inner Mongolia is quite weak. We will detour from there to Jin province, and then pass through the Jin Cha-ji base area to reach Yan'an. From here to Jin Cha-ji, we are responsible for your safety. When you arrive in Jin Cha-ji, our team is responsible for protecting your safety. Chen Wanyu has long received orders from the organization to protect Shen Yao's safety along the way. His superiors attach great importance to Shen Yao, firstly because he was already a martyr, and secondly, Shen Yao is now a high-end talent urgently needed by rabbits. Shen Yao gang wanted to say that there was no need for such trouble, but seeing Chen Wanyu's serious demeanor, Shen Yao couldn't argue back and could only obey the arrangement. After a few days of turbulence, Shen Yao and the escorted Chen Wanyu, along with them, passed through Outer Mongolia and successfully arrived at the border area. Next is the enemy-occupied area. Let me arrange everything, do you understand? After several days of getting along, Shen Yao and Chen Wanyu gradually became familiar and gained a deeper understanding of Chen Wanyu. This young female comrade is swift and agile, and her skills are also quite good. Thanks to her protection, everything has been so smooth along the way. Next, they are about to enter the Pseudo-Mongolia supported by the football chicken, which is also the most dangerous part of the way. Chen Wanyu somehow obtained the fake Mongolian pass, and the group smoothly entered the fake Mongolian. At the moment when they officially set foot on the land of the flower grower, a line of handwriting slowly appeared in Shen Yao's mind before his eyes. Congratulations to the host for returning to the flower planter's land and receiving a newbie reward. Do you want to activate it? Upon hearing this, Shen Yao was immediately overjoyed in his heart. I have a bit of conscience. Open. Ding. The newbie reward has been successfully activated. Congratulations to the host for obtaining 1,000 scientific research points and unlocking Soviet barracks technology. Accompanied by a prompt sound, the column of the Soviet barracks on the technology tree suddenly lit up, and Shen Yao was overjoyed. The novice gift package was given to the research site, and now he can unlock technology. Seems like entering a virtuous cycle. A few days later, Shen Yao, escorted by Chen Wanyu and others, successfully crossed the territory of Pseudo-Mongolia and entered Jin province. The transportation of several people has also changed from cars to horses. In today's Jin province, the footed chicken occupies the main cities, while in the vast mountainous and rural areas, it is the anti-Japanese base of rabbits. The majestic Taihang Mountains are filled with the figures of flower growers, soldiers, and civilians fighting hard to resist the invasion of footed chickens. By bypassing the front line of the sky, Shen Yao finally arrived at the headquarters of the 8th Route Army located in Tongjiling under the escort of Chen Wanyu and others. Shen Yao jumped off his horse and saw a short soldier standing at the entrance of the village in the distance. He held a whip and had a somewhat dark face with a hint of toughness and resilience. Seeing the person coming, Shen Yao's heart immediately became hot. He quickly stepped forward and saluted the other party with a military salute. Chief. Shen Yao applies to return to the team. Mr. Peng looked up and down at Shen Yao, patted his shoulder, and laughed heartily, saying, "You little devil, you haven't sent back so many things before we arrive. It's been a few years since we last saw each other, but you seem like a soldier. I have already applied to Yan'an, so you can stay with me temporarily. Our rabbit also has its own arsenal, and you will be responsible for this work from now on." We all listened to the leader's arrangements. Mr. Peng secretly arranged for him to go abroad back then. Mr. Peng had also worked with Shen Yao's parents in his early years, and Shen Yao seemed more like his own nephew than a subordinate. Let's go. Go back and talk. I heard that your kid has made a lot of achievements in the Eagle Sauce family, tell me a good story. Mr. Peng was about to pull Shen Yao into the village when suddenly a gunshot rang out. Mr. Peng frowned slightly, and the direction of the gunshot was actually the cliff behind the village. What's going on? Mr. Peng frowned slightly, and the gunfire did not stop. Instead, it became increasingly fierce, even accompanied by a violent explosion. At this moment, Shen Yao suddenly regained his senses and had a vague guess in his heart. Shouldn't it be so coincidental? Shen Yao felt a murmur in his heart. He suddenly remembered that the foot-bull chicken had once dispatched special forces to sneak attack the headquarters of the 8th Root Army. Good guy, he just came back and the headquarters is running out. Chapter 4. Unique, Hand-Rubbing Nuclear Weapons. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 4. Unique, Hand-Rubbing Nuclear Weapons. Back Mountain, Yang Village. The devils are showing their heads. Give me a hard beating. Kong Jie and the soldiers of the independent regiment are blocking the Japanese who have climbed up from the cliff. The perimeter of the 8th Root Army headquarters is now guarded by the independent regiment, but no one expected that the Japanese would launch a surprise attack from the cliff. The cliff in Yang Village was not previously fortified, and the independent regiment's guard post only discovered the enemy situation after the Japanese launched an attack. But the problem is, by the time the security guard discovered this group of devils, they had already stood firm on the cliff. 2nd Battalion Commander, escort the headquarters leaders to retreat immediately. The firepower of the foot-bull chicken was exceptionally fierce, and Kong Jie felt that the situation was somewhat wrong. The firepower of these devils was too fierce. They held a strangely shaped firearm in their hands, which, compared to the 38 large lids of ordinary Japanese troops, could shoot bullets continuously without hanging a bolt. The firepower of the independent regiment was quickly suppressed by the Japanese, and the Han-Yang-made weapons in the soldiers' hands were simply unable to deal with the strange guns in the Japanese hands. Soon, the independent group suffered hundreds of casualties. Kong Jie naturally felt heartbroken at this moment, but he knew that even with heavy casualties, he could not retreat. Once they withdrew, Tongjiling, where the headquarters was located, would be directly exposed to these devils. Comrades, everyone gritted their teeth to resist me. By time for the headquarters leaders to retreat. The soldiers of the independent regiment all turned a blind eye to death. Although they knew that these devils were extraordinary, their headquarters was behind them and they couldn't withdraw a step. Chief. You must transfer immediately. Tongjiling 8th Root Army headquarters, a few soldiers are about to leave with General Peng. The gunshots in the distance were getting closer and closer, as if the devils were about to strike. However, at this moment, Mr. Peng had a temper. What do you independent groups do to eat? Why can't you stop the enemy's attack? Kong Jiren, I want to dismiss him from his position. Seeing that General Peng refused to leave, several soldiers exchanged glances and prepared to step forward and forcefully retreat with General Peng. Seeing several people about to come up and leave, Mr. Peng became even more angry and directly patted the table. What do you want to do? I see who dares. Mr. Peng is not really just fighting for breath. This is the headquarters of the 8th Root Army, where many troops have stationed and military mobilization documents. In addition, there are also a large number of communication equipment such as radio stations. If transferred directly, these things will definitely be cheaper for the Japanese. Although he withdrew, a large number of documents will be in the hands of the Japanese, which is a significant problem for the survival of the 8th Root Army in the future. But now, it's obviously too late to immediately destroy the files and radio equipment. It's only a dozen miles from Yangtzuan to Tongjiling on the back mountain. Once the front line breaks down, the Japanese can quickly reach here. Seeing that General Peng had a real fire, several soldiers present dared not move. Why hasn't the leader been transferred yet? What are you doing eating? Just as the two sides were still deadlocked, Kong Jie's voice suddenly came from outside the door. Shen Yao instinctively looked up and saw a simple and honest-looking man walking into the door. It was undoubtedly Kong Jie. However, at this moment, Kong Jie looked a bit embarrassed and disheveled, still holding a box of bastard in his hand. Immediately leave with the leader. After Kong Jie entered, he found that Mr. Peng had not left yet. He immediately ordered his soldiers to forcibly take Mr. Peng away. Kong Jie. What do you want to do? I want to dismiss you from your position. Even if you directly kill me, Chief, I have to take you away now. Two soldiers rushed up and grabbed Mr. Peng's arm, preparing to take him away when suddenly a voice rang out from behind everyone. Actually, I think it's okay not to withdraw. Upon hearing these words, everyone's eyes couldn't help but look back and forth at the sound. Seeing that the speaker was actually a young man, Kong Jie didn't even take Shen Yao's words to heart and said anxiously to Mr. Peng, "These little devils are extraordinary. If you don't leave, you won't have time." By the time he left the front line, the independent regiment had already lost over 200 people. As one of the main forces of the 8th Route Army, the independent regiment suffered heavy losses on this scale. And this was just a half-hour battle between them and the devils. Kong Jie, who realized that the situation was not right, knew that if the headquarters leader did not retreat, it was very likely that they would not be able to do so. So he personally returned to the headquarters, wanting to forcibly transfer with Mr. Peng. But at this moment, after hearing Shen Yao's words, Mr. Peng suddenly broke free from the two soldiers beside him and asked Shen Yao, "Little ghost, are you sure you have a way?" As long as there is still a glimmer of possibility, Mr. Peng is unwilling to withdraw the headquarters. Forcefully transferring, even if all these radio stations and files were destroyed, would cause too much loss for the 8th Route Army. Even for a long time, the 8th Route Army will become deaf and blind. Nowadays, the entire Jin-Cha-Ji border area is undergoing anti-sweeping operations. If the headquarters withdraws at this time and loses command of the 8th Route Army, it is highly likely to suffer even more severe losses. There is a way. There is. Shen Yao's confidence naturally comes from the golden finger of the Red Alert technology tree. During his leisure time on the road, Shen Yao conducted detailed research on the technology tree and found that the 1,000 research points in the beginner gift package he gave earlier could perfectly unlock any infantry technology. Seeing Shen Yao lost in deep thought, Kong Jie, who was anxious, was about to interrupt when he was glared at by Mr. Peng beside him, afraid to speak more. At this moment, Shen Yao was quickly searching in his mind for the equipment that Soviet barracks could unlock. Mobilization equipment, Spitfire equipment, air defense infantry equipment, magnetic storm infantry equipment. The Soviet barracks provided a variety of equipment, but Shen Yao knew that most of them could not change the situation. Magnetic storm infantry equipment may be able to deal with a small number of devils, but as the number of devils increases, magnetic storm infantry, a type of unit that leans towards individual attacks in Red Alert, cannot be fully utilized. Shen Yao's gaze swept over each technology branch, and just as he was at a loss, he suddenly noticed one of the branches. Radiation engineering equipment. Shen Yao suddenly remembered the 10 grams of enriched uranium he had brought back. Although it only weighs 10 grams, it is a safe weapon level. Although it may not have the ability to destroy a city like an atomic bomb, changing the situation in a small area can definitely be easily achieved. Thinking of this, Shen Yao did not hesitate to choose to consume 1,000 scientific research points and exchange them for radiation engineering equipment. Ding! The technology of radiation engineering equipment has been unlocked. Congratulations to the host for obtaining the anti-radiation suit blueprint, nuclear backpack blueprint, radiation emitter blueprint. With the prompt sound, many things suddenly came to Shen Yao's mind, including the production methods of radiation guns and protective clothing, as well as the material sources of each component. It's all at this point. It seems a bit unreasonable not to rub the nuclear weapon with your hands. Chapter 5. Strongest miniaturized nuclear weapons. Nuclear backpack. You are listening at Novel Full. Audio. Chapter 5. Miniaturization of Nuclear Weapons. Nuclear Bomb Package. Chief, hurry up and transfer. Seeing that Shen Yao had not moved for a long time, Kong Jie was so anxious now. The independent team is at the front, although they can hold on for a while, maybe the defense line will be broken through at some point. The weapons of these devils are too strange. The 8th Root Army was already short of firearms and ammunition, so it is obvious that this consumption is not a solution. At this moment, even Mr. Peng's face was somewhat solemn. He chose to believe in Shen Yao and did not want to easily give up these equipment and documents from the headquarters. However, no one can say for sure what method Shen Yao can come up with. Does it consume uranium ore for production at this moment? A prompt sound suddenly popped out of Shen Yao's mind. Shen Yao was slightly taken aback. He originally thought that even if he unlocked the blueprint, production equipment would still need some twists and turns. What surprised him was that he could directly produce by investing the uranium mines around him. Friendly reminder. After unlocking each technology, a certain amount of resources can be consumed to produce one trial-type equipment. Trial-type equipment cannot be copied, and subsequent equipment of the same model can only be produced through real production. Just as Shen Yao was excited, the prompt sound rang out again. Shen Yao couldn't help but sigh. These golden fingers were clearly adding difficulty to him. If unlimited production can be achieved by simply investing resources, Shen Yao estimates that it won't be long before he can push the footed chicken flat. But except for the trial prototype number 1, the rest have to be produced by oneself, which is quite troublesome. The equipment and weapons in Red Alert are somewhat sci-fi, and it is obviously not easy to replicate them in reality. But now, for Shen Yao, a trial version is enough to save the situation. Kill the Special Operations team of the Football Chicken, and the 8th Root Army headquarters will be able to turn the tide. Mr. Peng, what about the things I asked people to bring back? Seeing Shen Yao regain his composure, Mr. Peng inexplicably breathed a sigh of relief. With Shen Yao's confident demeanor, Mr. Peng was also somewhat surprised. Does Shen Yao already have a solution? Didn't you write a letter saying you wouldn't let anyone get close? I had everyone piled up in the cave behind the village. Take me over quickly. Shen Yao didn't have time to explain too much, and Jin Ji couldn't explain it to Mr. Peng and his team. Upon seeing the situation, Mr. Peng immediately ordered the guards to take Shen Yao over. Before leaving, Shen Yao still said to Mr. Peng, "Chief, what Captain Kong said makes sense. You are the brain of our 8th Root Army, there must be no problem. Even if there is a 1% chance, it won't work. I also suggest that you temporarily transfer. I can assure you of what kind of headquarters you will be when you leave and what kind of headquarters you will be when you return." Listening to Shen Yao also saying the same, although Kong Jie did not know what kind of person Shen Yao was, it would be good to have one more person advise Mr. Peng. So Kong Jie also advised, "Chief, just listen to me. Your safety is the most important." Upon hearing Shen Yao's advice, Mr. Peng hesitated for a moment. After a moment, he finally made up his mind and said, "Okay. Then I'll listen to you once. Little devil, no matter what method you use to deal with the devils, protecting your own safety will always be the top priority. When I come back, I hope you can welcome me safely. Don't worry, Commander. I will definitely complete the task successfully." Shen Yao urged General Peng to leave quickly. Before everyone parted ways, Shen Yao stopped Kong Jie and reminded him, "Commander Kong, order all your people to retreat in half an hour. Don't be too eager to fight." Upon hearing this, Kong Jie suddenly felt a bit confused. Withdraw the position. Isn't the headquarters open to the Japanese? Do you think this young man wants to play an empty city trick? Comrade, this is not a child's play. Are you really confident? Shen Yao nodded solemnly. Of course, he was confident. In fact, if the independent team did not withdraw, he would not be able to perform well. Due to the conflict between the independent regiment and the Japanese near Yang village, the people of Yang village had already withdrawn from the village. Now, as long as the independent regiment withdrew, Yang village has become an empty village. Shen Yao no longer needs to worry about injuring his own people if he uses range-killing weapons. Okay, then I'll trust you once. Kong Jie still chose to believe in Shen Yao. He could see that Mr. Peng trusted Shen Yao very much, and he also believed in Mr. Peng's judgment. He couldn't be wrong in judging people. A group of people parted ways at the village entrance. Kong Jie led the staff of Mr. Peng's headquarters to transfer to the deep mountains, while Shen Yao, led by security personnel, found a place to store natural uranium in the back mountain. Natural uranium is different from enriched uranium in that its radiation is not as strong, and as long as it is not exposed for a long time, it will not cause any harm to the human body. But just in case, Shen Yao still instructed the headquarters in the previous communication that these things should be stored away from people. Shen Yao walked into the cave, opened the rain cloth, and saw the natural uranium ore piled up in the cave. Shen Yao also saw a box placed in the corner. Opening the box, he found 10 grams of concentrated uranium placed in the radiation protection device, quietly placed in a test tube. P.S. New book upload, kneeling down for support, seeking a flower, a review ticket, a monthly pass, a broken egg reward, and some even more explosive updates. I promised to do it, but didn't achieve JJ being 10 centimeters shorter. Chapter 6. Nuclear explosions initiated. No grass grows. Seeking. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Shen Yao asked the guards to go to the distance to guard, but now there was no one around. Shen Yao's heart twitched, and the warning sound immediately appeared in his mind, detected enriched uranium and natural uranium ore, whether to proceed with synthesis. Synthesis. Shen Yao's mind flickered as a white light flashed through the cave, and in an instant, several more things appeared in front of him. Anti-radiation suits, radiation emitters, and nuclear backpacks. The design of these equipment is no different from that of the Red Alert series. Nuclear backpacks can be used to store enriched uranium, radiation protection clothing to protect combat personnel, and radiation launchers are devices used to release enriched uranium. The radiation emitter has two operating modes. One is similar to firearms, attacking individual soldiers. Another approach is to release radiation within a certain range, causing damage to enemies within that range. Within a radius of 1 kilometer, all living organisms will be instantly killed by strong radiation. The radiation released by this mode has a decay period of nearly half an hour, which is almost impossible in scientific knowledge. The decay period of enriched uranium can last for hundreds or even thousands of years, but radiation engineering equipment is produced by Red Alert and cannot be inferred by common sense. After half an hour, the harm caused by radiation can be almost negligible, which is just right for Shen Yao. After all, this is the home of the people in Jin province. If this place is turned into a barren land that is no longer suitable for human habitation in order to kill the Japanese, it is not the result that Shen Yao wants to see. Shen Yao saw that the time was approaching and immediately began to wear his equipment. According to his agreement with Kong Jie, the soldiers of the independent regiment should be withdrawing from the defense line at this moment. When the little devils enter the radiation range, Shen Yao can take action. Thinking of this, Shen Yao couldn't help but have some expectations. Sure enough, you still have to manually slaughter these animals to be enthusiastic. The sound of gunfire gradually faded away in the distance, and then Shen Yao heard 3 gunshots. That is the evacuation signal, he agreed with Kong Jie. Shen Yao dressed up his radiation engineering equipment neatly, and when he walked out of the cave, the security guards guarding outside were truly startled. Who are you? Don't move. Guard Xiao Wang aimed his gun at Shen Yao. Shen Yao took off his helmet in silence, and Xiao Wang put down his gun with an embarrassed expression on his face. Comrade Xiao Wang, I remember there is still a horse in the village, right? Get on the horse now and leave quickly. The farther you run, the better. But I have been ordered by the CEO to protect your safety, I must execute the order. The security guard was also very stubborn. He felt that although Shen Yao was dressed very strangely now, he was also an intellectual. Maybe he wouldn't even know how to use a gun. It was a bit difficult for him to leave Shen Yao behind. Shen Yao was quite speechless about this. Once his radiation engineering equipment is used, there will be no more living creatures in this area. Did the CEO still say that you should follow my orders to act? I'm ordering you now, leave immediately. My safety doesn't need you to protect it. Shen Yao doesn't have time to entangle with this little guard here. The Japanese special forces are likely to touch him soon. Time is tight, so he must act quickly. A hint of hesitation flashed on Xiao Wang's face. The boss indeed asked him to protect Shen Yao's safety, but he also said that he must obey Shen Yao's orders. Seeing Shen Yao's confident demeanor, he could only salute him and choose to execute his orders. The guard rode away on his warhorse, and Shen Yao breathed a sigh of relief. At present, there should be no remaining people in this area. Shen Yao put on his helmet again and glanced at the radiation transmitter in his hand. If it were placed on the battlefield, this thing would definitely kill 1,000 enemies and cause 800 self-damage. Except for the radiation engineers wearing professional equipment, I couldn't escape anyone who didn't consider the enemy. However, on the contrary, this type of equipment has remarkable effects in isolating the battlefield. For example, now is the best time to apply this weapon. Perhaps this thing will play a big role in the future when the large troops are transferred to prevent the Japanese from pursuing them. Shen Yao's mind flickered as he suddenly thought of another use of radiation engineering equipment. However, these were all later words. Now what he needs to do is to take down these special forces of the devils. With this in mind, Shen Yao didn't hesitate to activate the radiation transmitter, and then found an empty residential building and directly activated the range radiation mode. Radiation is an intangible and intangible thing, but it is precisely because of this that it can also kill people invisibly. At the moment when the range radiation was activated, all the snakes, insects, ants, and beasts around Shen Yao died instantly, and the wild grass on the ground also withered instantly. And this scope is also quietly expanding. PS. New book upload, kneeling down for support, asking for a flower, a review ticket, a monthly pass, a broken egg reward, and some even more explosive updates. I promised to do it, but didn't achieve JJ being 10 centimeters shorter. Chapter 7. Human Slaughterhouse. Terrifying. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Outside Yang Village. Colonel Yamamoto looked at the empty village in front of him, as well as the remains of the 8th Route Army soldiers in the trenches, with a hint of suspicion on his face. According to the intelligence provided by the traders, they were completely able to locate the headquarters of the 8th Route Army nearby. At the beginning, the fierce resistance of the 8th Route Army troops seemed to confirm this. But what surprised Yamamoto was that just now, these harmless 8th Route Army suddenly stopped blocking and voluntarily withdrew from their positions. No good, people may have escaped. Everyone, start chasing immediately. Upon regaining his senses, Yamamoto quickly realized that the headquarters of the 8th Route Army had most likely completed the evacuation, and these 8th Route Army had completed their interception tasks before withdrawing from their positions. As long as you think about it carefully, you can understand that there is no time at all. The headquarters of the 8th Route Army must have left in a hurry, and many things are probably too late to be transferred. This raid has achieved quite good results. As long as Yamamoto obtains some intelligence and defense information from the 8th Route Army, the Japanese can use it to make a big fuss. But Yamamoto's goal goes beyond that. What he wants to achieve is to behead the high-level officials of the 8th Route Army, and he almost achieved this goal. Unwilling, Yamamoto immediately ordered the entire team to advance towards the direction of Tongjialing. If their actions were fast enough, there was a possibility of catching up with the enemy during the evacuation of the 8th Route Army. The Yamamoto team is well equipped and has extremely high tactical literacy, specializing in field pursuit, which is something that special forces are extremely skilled at. With Tong Jialing in the distance, Yamamoto dispatched a small team to enter the village to investigate the situation. Kill these people, and I will ask the commander for his credit. Prepare to attack. Yamamoto said, and the eyes of the entire special operations team flashed with enthusiasm. They are all special operations elites trained by the football chicken at the Hans Katz house, and they also claim to be the ace under the command of Kumraningsi. And this battle will also be their special operations team's rise to fame. Ouch! However, before Yamamoto could finish speaking, the sound of the team member vomiting suddenly came from behind, leaving a puddle of vomit on the ground. The team member's face turned pale, and after vomiting, he even couldn't stand up. Ba ga! Angry Yamamoto slapped the Japanese soldier in the face, accompanied by a crisp sound. Yamamoto was about to curse the soldier again, but suddenly a feeling of dizziness struck. Yamamoto stumbled, and then he noticed that more and more soldiers began to vomit and feel dizzy. That group of idiots in the cafeteria must be them. Yamamoto thought it was collective food poisoning, and the resentment in his eyes grew stronger. After returning, he must shoot all the cooks in the cafeteria. Yamamoto suppressed his dizziness and glanced at his watch. It had been more than 10 minutes, but the reconnaissance team sent out had not moved yet. Looking at the quiet Tong Jialing not far away, Yamamoto felt a bit eerie. Da-da-da-da, suddenly, a burst of gunfire came from the direction of Tong Jialing, accompanied by the screams of soldiers. The entire Yamamoto team was instantly alerted and loaded with bullets, and the next moment, they looked towards the direction of Tong Jialing, only to see an unforgettable scene in their lifetime. Several members of the reconnaissance team stumbled out of the Tongjia Ridge, covered in blood and their skin already ulcerated. Ah! As the soldier in the distance fell, a scream suddenly came from behind Yamamoto. The crowed-footed chickens turned around and saw the soldier who started vomiting first. At this moment, his skin began to peel off, and the intense pain made the soldier struggle wildly on the ground. Then, he began to vomit blood in large gulps. 1, 2, 3 more and more soldiers are experiencing similar symptoms, and at this moment, the quiet mountain village seems to have turned into a human purgatory. It was already too late when Yamamoto realized there were problems around here. More than 80% of the special operations team members have lost their mobility, their skin has ulcerated, and they are vomiting blood in large mouthfuls. Upon seeing this, Yamamoto could only abandon these team members and flee towards the cliff with a few soldiers who could still move, without looking back. By the edge of the cliff, the feeling of dizziness finally disappeared. Yamamoto looked in the direction of Tong Jialing with lingering fear, as if they had just walked through hell. I didn't see any of the 8th Route soldiers at all, but instead dropped a body on the ground. The soldiers of the football chicken all died in a pitiful state, and even Yamamoto, who was killing like a tree, recalled the ferocious faces of those soldiers, feeling an inexplicable fear in his heart. Yamamoto looked at the mournful corpse in the distance, then at the soldiers beside him. He suppressed the discomfort caused by tinnitus and shouted at the soldiers, "Withdraw! Withdraw immediately!" P.S. New book upload, kneeling down for support, asking for a flower, a review ticket, a monthly pass, a broken egg reward, and some even more explosive updates. I promised to do it, but didn't achieve JJ being 10 centimeters shorter. Chapter 8. Did the CEO look foolish? What kind of heinous killing is this? You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 8. Did the CEO look foolish? What kind of incredible weapon is this? It was already too late when Yamamoto realized there were problems around here. More than 80% of the special operations team members have lost their mobility, their skin has ulcerated, and they are vomiting blood in large mouthfuls. Upon seeing this, Yamamoto could only abandon these team members and flee towards the cliff with a few soldiers who could still move, without looking back. By the edge of the cliff, the feeling of dizziness finally disappeared. Yamamoto looked in the direction of Tongjiling with lingering fear, as if they had just walked through hell. I didn't see any of the 8th Route soldiers at all, but instead dropped a body on the ground. The soldiers of the foot-bowl chicken all died in a pitiful state, and even Yamamoto, who was killing like a tree, recalled the ferocious faces of those soldiers, feeling an inexplicable fear in his heart. At first, Yamamoto thought it was a rabbit's secret weapon, but on second thought, he realized it was unlikely. That group of 2 Balu. Xiaomi with a rifle. Even 2 or 3 people can match a gun, how could such an army have such a powerful weapon? Thinking of this, Yamamoto became increasingly confused. He had received modern education from the Han's cat army, but now he had to believe those ghosts and gods. Is it true that there are some deities protecting this ancient and mysterious land? Yamamoto was thinking about it when he suddenly saw a strand of hair falling in front of him. He suddenly realized something and quickly took off his helmet, frantically scratching his head a few times. He was shocked to find that his hair had started to fall off in large pieces. Besides, the pores on his arm are starting to ooze blood. Other soldiers also experienced similar situations to varying degrees, with a hint of despair in the eyes of the group of footed chickens. Can they still go back smoothly? At this moment, Tongjiling. Shen Yao watched from afar as Yamamoto fled in a panic with a few remaining soldiers, and immediately eliminated the range radiation. Then, Shen Yao took out a detector from his waist and monitored the changes in radiation values. He is at the center of the radiation here, and the closer the footed chicken gets to his position, the faster it will die. And now, what Shen Yao felt miraculously was that the radiation value that had almost exploded on the surface was rapidly decaying at a speed visible to the naked eye. Half an hour later, the radiation levels in the entire area have returned to normal levels. Upon seeing this, Shen Yao took off his radiation protection suit and his body did not feel any discomfort. Immediately, Shen Yao hung a red flag at the highest point in the village and waved towards the direction of Peng and his team's retreat. On a mountain peak several kilometers away from Tongjiling, Mr. Peng saw Shen Yao waving to them under the red flag at the highest point of the village through a telescope. Is this over? Peng and Kong Jie exchanged a glance, both seeing a hint of shock and confusion in each other's eyes. Boss, please don't go down yet. I'll take the security company to check the situation. Kong Jie still felt uneasy and prepared to take the security company to explore the way first. But Mr. Peng couldn't stand it anymore. He glanced at Kong Jie and snorted coldly, "You're all here, so I don't believe that little devils can still behead me in front of your group." Kong Jie suddenly felt a bit embarrassed. With this battle going like this today, it was estimated that he, as the regimental leader, would also end up. However, fortunately, there was no danger to the headquarters of Mr. Peng. "Boss, I just feel a bit strange. The little devil's firepower is so fierce. How did Comrade Shen Yao get rid of them?" Mr. Peng is getting more and more displeased with Kong Erlengzi at this moment. He has already taken the thought of defeating Kong Jie, the commander of the regiment, for today's battle has been tough. So he didn't speak and directly led the people down the mountain. After descending the mountain, as they approached the direction of Tongjiling, Peng, Kong Jie, and even the soldiers of the independent regiment became more frightened. Various dead objects, such as ants, insects, mice, and sparrows, can be seen everywhere on the roadside, as if there are no more living creatures in this area. Therefore, when he saw Shen Yao waving at them from the village head, the expression on Mr. Peng and Kong Jie's face became even more peculiar. "Little ghost, what exactly did you use here?" After seeing those pitiful-looking members of the foot-bowl chicken special operations team, Mr. Peng couldn't help but look at Shen Yao beside him with deep meaning and couldn't help but ask. "How can I tell you? This is a secret weapon currently being developed by Eagle Sauce, and my main research there is also this one. Shen Yao threw the pot over to Eagle Sauce. Although there are still 2 years left until the start of the Manhattan Project, Mr. Peng cannot personally go to Eagle Sauce's side to verify. Using Eagle Sauce as a shield is not a problem. This weapon uses radioactive materials, and the radiation generated can cause great damage to organisms in an instant. As for its power, you have already seen it. Upon hearing this, Mr. Peng nodded thoughtfully and then sighed. I didn't expect that the weapons on the Eagle Sauce side have already advanced to this level. This can definitely be called a weapon to suppress the country. We rabbits have a long, long way to go. Is it possible for our rabbits to replicate this weapon? PS 8th update. Kneeling down for support, asking for a flower, a review ticket, a monthly pass, a broken egg reward, and sometimes even more explosive updates. It's said and done, but it's not true that JJ is 10 centimeters shorter. Chapter 9. This item is enough to conquer a country. Go to the arsenal. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 9. This item is enough to conquer a country. Go to the arsenal. Mr. Peng immediately asked Shen Yao, with even a hint of excitement in his tone. If Shen Yao could replicate this weapon, his combat power against rabbits would definitely be a qualitative leap. Shen Yao scratched his head somewhat helplessly. Although the radiation engineering equipment was good, this wave of experimental manufacturing, combined with dealing with the little devils, he had already used up all the enriched uranium in his hand. It is almost impossible to mass-produce radiation engineering equipment in a short period of time. Chief, this weapon requires very special materials and is a disposable consumable. It is almost impossible to replicate it in a short period of time. But as long as our foundation can rise, the future is not impossible. Upon hearing this, Mr. Peng still felt somewhat regretful. If this thing could be taken out and used on the front battlefield, it would be impossible for the rabbit to recover Taiyuan. However, on a second thought, Mr. Peng realized that Shen Yao has returned now. Since Shen Yao said it could be done, let's take this matter slowly. Sooner or later, something can happen. Thinking of this, Mr. Peng's mood suddenly improved a lot, and his attention returned to the corpse of the devil on the ground. Seeing these corpses lying on the ground in completely different attire from ordinary devils, Mr. Peng's expression was somewhat solemn. He picked up a submachine gun from beside a corpse, carefully examined it, and said, "Is this a submachine gun, or a model I've never seen before?" After speaking, Mr. Peng made a shot towards the distant open space. Seeing a series of bullets fired from Mr. Peng's submachine gun, Kong Jie and the commanders of the independent regiments' faces changed. No wonder dozens of devils can suppress them with firepower. How can Hanyang make compete with this thing? Submachine guns, watermelon thunder, these devils are not ordinary. Mr. Peng noticed the Japanese grenade again, and then picked up a Japanese helmet from the ground. Bring a gun. Mr. Peng asked the security guard next to him for a Hanyang-made helmet, and then asked someone to place it 200 meters away. Next, aim and shoot. Bang! Accompanied by a gunshot, the helmet unexpectedly did not fly out. As everyone approached, a distance of 200 meters only left a small dent on the helmet. Peng picked up the helmet and handed it to Kong Jie beside him. Kong Jie weighed the helmet and spoke in surprise, "Boss, this helmet is much heavier than ordinary little devils." Nonsense. These are all things belonging to the Han's cat. In my early years, I had a fight with Bald Man's mechanic, and only the Han's cat can make things of such hard quality. Gang Village, this old boy really looks up to me, Peng. He even dispatched such a force to carry out the beheading operation. Upon hearing this, Kong Jie breathed a sigh of relief. It seemed that this wave was not his problem either. Instead of failing, he was able to make contributions. The devils with such equipment configuration have never seen them before in Jin province. This time, they are blocking the headquarters. However, all of this also fell into the eyes of Mr. Peng. I said Kong Erlangzi, what are you laughing at? Although these devils are well equipped, it's not a reason why your team was defeated by dozens of people. I still want to punish you. Don't be the leader. Be the deputy leader. The leader's headquarters will arrange someone else to do it. Kong Jia suddenly wilted upon hearing this, but couldn't help but ask, boss, who will be the team leader? After pondering for a moment, Mr. Peng quickly found a candidate and said, isn't that kid Li Yunlong still serving as the factory director at the bedding factory? Let him lead the independent team. It's not Mr. Peng, Li Yunlong. I heard that the new team leader is Li Yunlong, and Kong Jia's scalp is tingling. Who is this new team leader? He can't be Li Yunlong, that bastard. Knowing that he had fought such a cowardly battle, more than 200 people were killed by dozens of devils, and he almost had the headquarters taken away, Li Yunlong couldn't figure out how to laugh. What nonsense! Obey orders. Kong Jia originally wanted to struggle again, but when Mr. Peng glared at Kong Jia, he wilted and could only obediently obey orders. After arranging for Kong Jia, Mr. Peng turned his head and said to Shen Yao, little devil, where do you want to go? Do you have any ideas? Listen to the leader's arrangements. Shen Yao probably had a guess about his whereabouts. Originally, he was going to the rear area, but Mr. Peng applied to Yenin to keep him. There must be a deep meaning behind it, as long as he obeyed the arrangement. Peng nodded with a smile and immediately said, I have indeed thought of a good place for you. Coincidentally, the Japanese have been repelled now, and the deterrence caused by your weapon will definitely not dare to launch a surprise attack in the short term. The headquarters also needs to seize these 2 days to move quickly. I will personally go there and take you there. Boss, that's not necessary, is it? Shen Yao knew clearly. Boss was the brain of the entire 8th Route Army, the highest commander, and his daily affairs were very busy. Having the CEO personally send him off, Shen Yao was somewhat flattered. You are the biggest hero in defending the headquarters this time. It's only right for me to personally escort you. Mr. Peng smiled and patted Shen Yao's shoulder, then greeted him with a smile, Xiao Wang, lead a horse. Let's go to the Huangya Cave Arsenal. P.S. 9th update. Kneeling down for support, asking for a flower, a review ticket, a monthly pass, a broken egg reward, and sometimes even more explosive updates. It's said and done, but it's not true that JJ is 10 centimeters shorter. Chapter 10. Director of a military factory. Boss's task. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 10. Director of a military factory. Boss's task. Mr. Peng personally escorted Shen Yao to the Huangjiadong arsenal with his guard company. Shen Yao had long heard of this famous factory. In the harsh environment of the anti-Japanese war, the Huangjiadong arsenal can be said to have created miracles in the mountains and valleys. The military industry of rabbits has grown from scratch, and the Huangjiadong arsenal has made great contributions. On the way, Mr. Peng also briefly introduced the situation of the arsenal to Shen Yao. Last year, the Japanese attacked Yusha and the Hanzhuang arsenal was threatened by the Japanese. Therefore, the headquarters decided to move the arsenal to Huangya Cave and transform it into a Huangya Cave arsenal. Although it is an arms factory, you are also aware of the situation with our rabbits. The conditions there are actually quite difficult, so you need to be mentally prepared. Shen Yao nodded. In fact, he had anticipated that this military factory might be different from the later definition of a military factory. It was more about repairing equipment and building some earth guns and cannons. As for the standard equipment, he may not have the ability to manufacture it yet. Don't worry, leader. Since I'm back, I'm ready, Shen Yao said with a smile. Having golden fingers in hand is not a problem. If Shen Yao were the kind of person who retreats despite difficulties, he would definitely stay with Yingjiang and not come back. As the two of them were speaking, Xiao Wang next to them pointed to the distant mountains and said, Chief, look, the Huangya cave has arrived. Shen Yao looked in the direction pointed by Xiao Wang, between the lush mountains and forests, on a straight cliff, a huge cave unexpectedly protrudes from the vertical rock wall in mid-air. That's the Huanya cave over there. Jin province has an advantage as there are mountainous areas everywhere, which is very advantageous for us rabbits to engage in enemy rear operations. I believe the devils never imagined that our rabbits would build an arsenal in such a wilderness. Mr. Peng smiled and said. The mountain road was rugged, and although the cave seemed very close at first glance, the group walked for several hours before finally arriving. At the entrance of the cave, Shen Yao was even more amazed by the perilous terrain occupied by the Huanya cave. The narrowest part of the cave can only accommodate one carriage, which is basically a situation where one person is in charge and 10,000 people are unable to pass. The cadres of the arms factory clearly had heard that General Peng was coming early and were waiting at the entrance of the cave. A middle-aged soldier led by him stepped forward to pay a military salute to General Peng, and then looked at Shen Yao beside him and said, "General Manager, is this Vice Factory Director Shen? Our rabbit is a talented overseas student." Shen Yao was just thinking of getting to know a new colleague, but upon hearing this soldier's words, he was immediately stunned. What Deputy Factory Director? Boss. This. Mr. Peng couldn't help but burst into laughter when he saw Shen Yao's bewildered expression and said, "There's nothing surprising. Ming Lei was right. I officially appoint you as the Deputy Director of the Huanjiadong Arsenal. This is Factory Director Cheng Minglei, my old subordinate." Of course, Comrade Cheng Minglei is completely clueless about technology. In the future, the personnel of the arsenal will be managed by Comrade Cheng Minglei, and your son will be responsible for mastering technology. I have set up the stage for you, and then you can just let go. After Mr. Peng finished speaking, not only Shen Yao, but also the cadres of other arms factories were somewhat surprised. Although I had known before that a deputy factory director would be parachuted into the arsenal, who was still a talented person from the Eagle Sauce family who had returned from studying abroad, no one expected that Shen Yao would be so young. At this moment, some doubts couldn't help but arise in everyone's hearts. Can this new deputy factory director really be their leader? Let's go, let's not stand at the door anymore. Go in and say, go in and say. Mr. Peng didn't pay much attention to the eyes of those people, but directly pulled Shen Yao and Cheng Minglei into the arsenal. Entering the workshop, the arms factory had already prepared a welcome party for Shen Yao. The red banner reads, "Warmly welcome Comrade Shen Yao," and several small dishes are placed on the temporary tables pieced together from the workshop workbench. The conditions here in the arms factory were equally difficult, and this welcome party was not grand, but it still made Shen Yao feel very warm. Compared to the Eagle Sauce on the other side of the ocean, this is the home in his heart. Comrade Shen Yao, the budget in the factory is limited, and this welcome party is a bit rudimentary. I hope you don't mind. Shen Yao smiled and shook his head, his gaze wandering around the workshop. The workers were curious as they looked at him, the expert who had returned from overseas, with a hint of surprise and restraint. Shen Yao's gaze fell on the old machine tools not far away, silently counting in his heart. The entire arsenal only had a dozen or so machine tools. This condition can no longer be described as difficult, it is not an exaggeration to say that one's family is alone. Shen Yao sighed and realized that the current situation for the rabbit was even more difficult than he had imagined. The equipment is basically seized, and it can be said that there is no production capacity at all. Capturing enemy equipment often requires soldiers to sacrifice blood or life. P.S. The 10th update. Kneeling down for support, asking for a flower, a review ticket, a monthly pass, a broken egg reward, and sometimes even more explosive updates. It's said and done, but it's not true that JJ is 10 centimeters shorter.